Well, good morning. This video is a little different. I'm not even outside. In fact, we're inside our summer home. It's a fifth wheel, and it's at our camp where we campground host in Montana. And this video, I'm just going to attempt to answer some of the questions I've had from people about campground hosting. The first biggest question is, how do you get to be a campground host? Well, this is how I would go about it. Number one, I would select an area of the country that I'd like to spend the season in. Generally, that's the summer, though obviously in some parts of our country they need campground hosts in the wintertime. So first of all, select an area that you would like to be in. Then contact the various agencies that are represented in that area. That could be BLM. It could very well be Forest Service, and that's who we host for and have for a number of years. It could be the state. We spent one season hosting for Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. It could be maybe even a county campground, or even in a city campground sometimes where they have hosts. But contact the local area, the local facility, and ask them about opportunities about hosting. I think that's the best way to go about it. There are some websites about work camping, etc. But as far as campground hosting, I don't think you could do much better than actually contacting your local area. In our case, it's the Forest Service, and in that case, you would contact your local ranger district because those are the people at that ranger district are the ones that are responsible for staffing and maintaining the campgrounds. A lot of people come to me and say, "Isn't it sometimes a hassle? Don't you have problems with campers?" And I guess you could say maybe, but I think the most important thing I can relate to anybody watching this video is that if you were acting as a campground host, you are just that. You are a host. Your job is to greet the people, give them information about the local area, just basically answer questions about, in this case, the forest that we happen to be in and some of the hiking trails, etc. around it. I want to stress that you are not a campground cop. Yes, I do tell people occasionally, remind them what the rules are. For instance, if it's noisy after 10 at a certain campgrounds, maybe people are having too much fun, I'll tell them, 10 o'clock is our quiet time. We have neighbors. Please keep it down. But that's it. If I have problems after that, and we have occasionally had problems, but in the 8 or 9 years we've done this, it's very, very seldom. We have the local sheriff's department, and of course, in our case, the Forest Service law enforcement officer to call on if necessary. Generally speaking, that's not the case. People camp at a campground to get away, to have fun, to enjoy themselves. And if you put yourself in the place of that camper and act like you would like to be acted on by a host, then I think you'll have no problems. But remember, you're a host, you're not a cop. Another question I get often is, what are your duties other than the so-called hosting that I mentioned earlier? In some of the campgrounds, you'll help out with, for instance, cleaning or supplying the restrooms in the area. Again, it depends on the district you're working with. Sometimes there will be some light maintenance. We don't have any that's required, but I often will help the local Forest Service recreational person if they need any help. Mostly advice, a lot of questions about the geographic area around our campground, particularly from those people that are traveling through. Sometimes we will get questions about the fees and how that works, and whether or not a certain agency pass would work within the campground system in our campground. We have to keep an eye on things like campground fires, when particularly when we might have a fire closure or an area or a season that the fires can be threatening. A question I recently was asked is, do you need to report the value of your campsite on your income tax as income? I never have. We've never been given a 1099 or any other form that you might need to file with your taxes. And any per diem that we've received in the during the course of our duties has been just that, a per diem, and you do not pay tax on that. It's just to offset your expenses. Now, there may be private campgrounds that would be a totally different answer to that question. All I can do is talk about the ones that we have hosted for the BOR, the Forest Service, and the Montana State Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. How long is your season? How long do you have to be a campground host? In our campground, we volunteer for the entire season. And as a matter of fact, in our particular case, we come back to the same campground year after year. And there is no limit set by the Forest Service on the number of years you can do that, at least in our district here in Montana. I have heard that some of the state parks, for instance in Arizona, limit the time that the hosts can actually host to, I believe it was a 5-year period, but I'm not too sure about that. Some campgrounds have shorter periods where maybe you would volunteer for a month or 2 months, and then someone else would come in. We love it here. We take a little personal responsibility for our campground, and we prefer to be here for the entire season. What training do I need, or will I be given as a campground host? It depends on the area. Most of the agencies that use campground hosts will supply first aid training. Many require first aid CPR training, and it's generally given either on an annual basis or sometimes every couple of years. So you have the opportunity for that. The Forest Service has other various short classes, hygiene, handling hazardous material, that type of thing. That's usually pretty interesting and always supplied by the agency. Most agencies also provide an orientation training. They give you a general overview of what you'll be doing as a host. So as far as any educational background, not really. The love for the outdoors and the ability to meet and talk to people and enjoy doing that are the real requirements. And if you don't have those, don't bother even to think about it. But the other more technical training that you might need in your particular geographic area would be provided by the agency you're volunteering. I think I've answered most of the questions that have been presented to me, particularly over the last year or so. This year, things are a little different with the pandemic situation occurring right now, and I did put out a video earlier on COVID-19 and how that affects the campground hosting. We haven't seen a big change in what we do because of it. We have seen lots of campers. Our campground is full almost every single night, so we have been very busy. I might add there are other things that you might do while you're hosting to help out your local Forest Service. For a while, we have sponsored or helped with the Junior Ranger program that the Forest Service has, and also I've volunteered at the state fair with the Bear Aware program that teaches people the differences of the grizzly and the black bear, which is not necessarily appropriate all over the country, but it is appropriate here in Montana. So those are sort of the fun things you do in addition to the regular daily duties of the host. One other thing I'll mention is that there are no real set hours. If you're a host and if you're in your campsite, people are going to walk up and ask questions all the time, and that's fine. I like to spend time out at our campfire, which we have at our site, and people will walk up and visit and maybe share a beverage and chat about where they're from or where they're going. So if you're interested in campground hosting, again, find the area that you want to go to and contact the agencies within that area that might have campgrounds and go from there. So good luck, and when you're hosting, remember to break away once in a while and keep hiking.